Welcome in to Club Dynasty, the second episode of Club Dynasty. I kind of just take a back seat. If you know my Dynasty team, well, it's not that good. I am improving, gradually improving. I know what I'm doing wrong, so I can tell you what not to do. But joining
Sometimes that's the easiest part, though.
That's true. That's very true. Joining me, as always, Joshua Hudson and Ryan Weiss. And for the first time ever on any Club Fantasy show, we have Marvin Elequin, writer with the Fantasy Footballers and Dynasty Nerds. Thanks for joining, Marvin.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to talk some Dynasty with y'all.
Hell yeah, dude. It's going to be fun.
Go. This is going to be a lot of fun. So, first things first, how this is going to kind of run down, we're going to do some quick hits for Marvin. We're also going to talk a little bit about some of the guys we had discussed in our first episode. If you missed that, you can find it on our YouTube page. It was with Tommy Garrett from Pro Football Network. We're also going to talk about who are you looking to scoop up and realistically for what price, whether it's a big name or maybe some guy who's down this year, potentially some rookies in the mix. And then second-year guys, you're ready to just completely give up on their careers. And then looking at rebuilding teams and how are we approaching some of these running backs by the names of Aaron Jones, Chris Carson, James Conner, and Leonard Fournette, because some of you may know they don't have a contract as of right now heading into 2021. So we'll talk about that as well. Also, a quick disclaimer, this is a Dynasty show, so there might be a lot of start, sit, redraft questions in there. Josh or myself will answer them in the chat, but we are going to try and keep everything Dynasty focused.
As I type that in the private chat to remind everybody.
Yes.
I made an addendum in the show doc.
I didn't look at
God, Brian, pay attention.
I know.
Jeez.
This is why we bring smarter people than me on. I'm
yes,
just here.
exactly. God, it's incredible. All right. So we'll start here. So on our first show with Tommy, who we already see here in the chat, and he says, for you, Marvin, he set the bar low. So you can really only go up from here.
All right.
That's the key.
We love you, buddy. Love you, Tommy.
Love you, Tommy. We mentioned James Robinson and Tyler Boyd as guys that we as a whole were rising on, and guys like Michael Gallup and Kenyon Drake we were getting nervous about or kind of fading. Have any of these players, essentially in the last month, done anything to kind of sway how any of you guys have felt a month ago about any of these four names? And Marvin, we'll start with you. It doesn't matter who you want to start with, but go ahead. Out of any of these four, have they ticked up, ticked down? What's your opinions?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with James Robinson, one of the guys that no one really expected to just pop out of nowhere and just produce RB1 numbers in like 50% of his games. So he's just been super impressive since joining the league. And I definitely think over the last month, if anything, he's solidified his dynasty value. I think he's potentially a top 24 dynasty running back, considering some of the guys that are fading. One of the guys you already mentioned, Kenyon Drake, who's fading. What's impressive with him is that he's just so efficient. He's efficient in the passing game. He's great at evading tackles, creating yards above what the line's giving him. So he's a really good running back. And regardless of the draft capital that was invested in him, he's proving that he belongs. And to me, over the last 4 weeks, if there was any doubt for the first 4 weeks, I think we know now who he is. And, there's a little bit of a uncertainty with the quarterback situation, but I think they'll lean on him more here going forward. So I like him a lot in going forward and for Dynasty.
I think the crazy thing is 107 out of 113 running back carries for a guy who nobody knew what was going to happen.
Right.
They're not even trying to get anybody else involved.
Mm-hmm.
Josh, anything to add on Kenyon Drake? I know you are the biggest Kenyon Drake fan in terms of his talent, but I mean, outside of that one game where he torched the worst defense in NFL history statistically right now, is there anything that may have swayed your mind outside of that Cowboys game to say, okay, Kenyon Drake, maybe he gets re-signed next year to Arizona, or does he move on to better pastures? Because he's only 25, I believe, 26, so he still has another 3 years if you want to, put him up to that 30 spot.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely has more years left, I think. But again, all running backs have a short shelf life.
Correct.
So, a lot of years could be 2. And really, it's going to be based on, does any team decide to sign him? Because Arizona was only willing to give him a 1-year deal. If you're a team in the NFL right now that needs a running back, looking at what Drake has done or really hasn't done this year, why would you want to give him a multi-year deal? You know what I mean? We've seen the Dolphins have already given up on him. They gave Jordan Howard a 2-year contract, and they basically said, Howard, you're a healthy scratch every week. Yeah. So it's like teams are willing to discard the running back position. They don't want to invest heavily in that. So this is a decent running back class coming out. Next couple of years, probably not. So maybe we'll see Drake kind of bounce around to different teams. But for me, I don't see that long-term value that I was hopeful for going into this year based on how Drake finished in Arizona and really how they've utilized him this year.
He's just going to reunite with Adam Gase in New York next year.
Oh, God, please don't. I don't even think he would want to do that.
I'm sure he would.
Gross.
But absolutely imagine the fantasy headlines.
Oh, no. Right. Oh, my goodness. Let's just hope Adam Gase is not the coach there next year.
I don't wish ill on anyone, let alone to lose their jobs, but Adam Gase needs to get the hell out of the NFL. He's so bad. Bad.
I want the job security of Adam Gase. I say this all the time. I want to be so bad at my job that people just hire me either for the giggles or just for the headlines. I want to be that bad at my job. Not really. Employers listening, I am unemployed. Don't think that. I'm a good employee, but just the fact that he's touted, Josh says all the time, he's touted as a QB whisperer, and every quarterback that's left his system has done better than when they were in that system.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. He is a magician for slot receivers in fantasy football. That's the only thing we like him for.
Yeah.
But
and that's another guy. Like, imagine if Gase gets fired. Look at the value drop of Jamison Crowder.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is going to absolutely plummet. You want to talk about somebody that if you have them in Dynasty, sell the hell out of them, it's Jamison Crowder.
Ryan sold him to me.
Yep.
Keenan
Allen.
Whatever. It was not straight up, Marvin. Let's be honest. Let's just.
Oh my God!
Not straight up.
Straight up.
Marvin, my team is 3-5, so I'm ready to.
The look on your face, Marvin.
Yeah, no,
that was priceless.
So Marvin, I'll tell you, right? So,
all right,
my team right now is 3-5. Mm-hmm. One of my wins is against Josh, and that's all that matters. So my team's 3-5. I have Cortland Sutton, who's out for the season. I have Alan Lazard, who's been on IR. Mm-hmm. So two of my top dogs that I was relying on this year. My running back position is a pile of shit. There's no covering it up. It is David Johnson and the Island of Misfit Toys. I have Kyler Murray, but that's really it, right? I've had Dallas Goedert on IR, so I got really hurt. Keenan Allen is my favorite receiver in the NFL, and I know Ryan is 1B next to me in the fan club. And I ended up getting, it was 2 second-round picks in succeeding years, 2021 and 2022, for Keenan Allen. And I got Jamison Crowder in that mix. Yeah. For Keenan Allen, I think I gave him back a third this year or next year. Yeah. One of the two. I didn't want to give up Keenan Allen, but I knew, because I wanted to ride him out his entire career, but I knew I needed draft capital. And I knew, just looking based off of last year and how good these incoming classes are going to be, especially this year and potentially in 2022, I'm like, T. Higgins went in the second round. And you're like, look at guys that even went in the third and the fourth rounds. Like, there's a lot of value that could be there. So I was okay giving away for a second. But yeah, no, I did not trade Keenan Allen for Jamison Crowder straight up. Let's get this off the table here.
The draft capital helps. So you're right, though. It's going to be another deep class, especially at receiver. So then those seconds, hopefully if things break right, you might be getting someone like T. Higgins or Chenault, someone like him. Yeah. So that'd be great for your team.
Yeah, exactly. or potentially a decent running back falls to me down there. But something
I was
to
going to say, Zach Moss fell to a lot of second
back
round
end of the
this
second
past
round
year,
in our
so
draft. I know that.
I've got him in quite a few dynasty
Yeah.
leagues, and I'm not complaining about that one bit.
I got him in, I think, all 3 dynasties that I'm in, and I think, well, one was a startup, so I don't know if I have him there, but in the
You
2
didn't get him in the Ballers and Friends dynasty league,
in
I got him.
in the 2 where we had rookie drafts, I got him, and it was like 2nd and 3rd round, and it's just crazy. So
Yeah, a lot of people thought that Singletary would probably be more of a player in that offense, and it just
in the red zone
hasn't turned out that way, especially in the red zone. But going back to Kenyon Drake quick, because I think a guy that's not probably talked about maybe enough is Chase Edmonds, because right now he's 22. He was signed at 22. Excuse me. So he's 24, I believe, right now, because he was signed back in 2018. So he's 24 right now. Him and Eno Benjamin are the only 2 running backs under contract for the Arizona Cardinals heading into 2021. If you are in a dynasty league, would you try and go and get Chase Edmonds? Because looking at it right now, we know Cliff Kingsbury loves Chase Edmonds. Would you want to go and get him, potentially thinking that he's going to be, I don't know, the number 1 guy, or at least the 1A in the offense in the backfield next year? Anybody answer. I don't care who.
let's start with Marvin.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, do it right now before he blows up here this weekend. I shared some information, tweeted something out, I don't know, was like last week after the game. And Drake averages like 9 yards created per game. And in that week 7 game alone, Edmonds had 40. So he's just more efficient. He's just, and what's impressive about that is that he received the workload and still maintained it and was efficient and one of the better running backs that week. So to me, this could be, Sam in the chat mentioned that Edmonds will do to Drake what Drake did to David Johnson. I 100% agree with that, because if he performs well this week and it's his backfield, at least for this Sunday, then how can they go back to what Drake has given them for the last 6-7 weeks? It's he hasn't been efficient. He's only received the workload, and that's about the only thing that's keeping him fantasy relevant. So I think it's this week we could start to see that trend in a different direction, unfortunately, and it's coming with an injury, which is unfortunate, but it might be Edmonds' backfield going forward.
And I think a lot of the things that people want to hang on to with Drake was the 3 touchdown game last year, but Edmonds had one as well. So you can't even.
It just goes to show you how running back friendly that offense is.
Yeah.
Or how running back friendly it can be.
Yeah.
Why, like we talked about this last year, like when David Johnson was just running straight into the line. It's like, why are they calling these plays? Guess what? They're doing the same damn thing for Drake. They're running right into the freaking line every time with him. And it's like, this guy can get out to the edge. Why are we not running sweeps and letting him, go off tackle and utilize that speed that he's known for? And now they're giving Edmonds all those opportunities. So when this thing shifts, who's to say that Edmonds isn't going to do exactly what Drake did this year and just have all the plays to run right up the gut? And then all of a sudden, it's Eno Benjamin with the 3 touchdown games.
I'll take it. I drafted Eno Benjamin in Dynasty League. I'll take it.
Trade for both. That's the solution. There you go.
Yeah, get both.
It's not a bad backfield to have every piece of.
Yeah.
For sure.
I have said it multiple times. Cliff Kingsbury is a guy that likes his running backs short, fast, and quick. Kenyon Drake is not short, and his vision sucks right now. I mean, Marvin said it, 9 yards created compared to, Edmonds' 40 that he did in one game.
Yeah.
So it's his vision's not there. Drake is not the shifty guy that Kingsbury wants. I think you may see Kenyon Drake stay in the division and maybe slide up to Seattle for a year or two and maybe go up there, because I don't believe they re-signed Chris Carson. Your guys behind him are Rashad Penny, if they still believe in him and want to keep him there, Travis Homer, and DJ Dallas. I mean, Dallas looked good, but Josh, you know better than anyone, I don't think Dallas is a between the tackles runner. or he hasn't been
He's
as efficient.
okay.
Yeah.
He's okay. But the thing is one thing that he's very good at, which the same thing that Travis Homer is good at, which is the same thing that Carlos Hyde and Chris Carson are good at, is breaking tackles. And they need that in Seattle because they do not invest in their offensive line.
Yeah.
So you need a running back that is going to be able to, when they're hit, shed tacklers. And that's something that Dallas does very well.
They tell their offensive linemen to run forward. If they ever tell them to move backwards, it's an anomaly to that offensive line. All right. So quickly, want to go over some of these trades here, Josh, that you have in the show doc that are involving both James Robinson and Tyler Boyd. So I'll read them off here, and I kind of want to get opinions from both sides. So in the first one, these are both Superflex PPR, correct, Josh?
Correct. No
Okay.
tight end premium.
No tight end premium, so your classic PPR, but the Superflex, you're allowed to start 2 QBs. One side traded Tyler Boyd, Chase Edmonds, and most likely a 2021 late second-round pick for Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, and a 2022 third. Me, personally, looking at that, I would much rather have the Boyd Edmonds and 2021 second side of things, but I'd like to hear both sides. Marvin, I'll start with you on this one. What are your thoughts on this? Because I feel all of us here are kind of... Boyd's stock is slowly growing with the chemistry he's building with Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I lean in that on that side of the trade as well. Boyd, Edmonds in that second. I'm starting to like Boyd more and more the more we see from him, and the fact that he's tied to a young ascending quarterback, has a great compliment there in Higgins, and AJ Green's going to be gone, I'm assuming, next year. We'll see what happens there. I like Edmund a lot, Edmonds and Boyd, both of them, going forward. So to me, I think that's a great trade. I think Boyd's going to be a good wide receiver for a long time. It's tough letting go of Miles Sanders and Boston Scott. I think there's a lot of productivity there, and Miles has been one of the better running backs as well here when he's healthy. But I think that's a pretty good haul for a workhorse running back in Miles Sanders. And for all we know, we're not even sure next year what that backfield's going to look like. I mean, we know Miles Sanders is the guy this year, but who's to say he's the guy going forward as well? I mean, he's getting the workload now, and he hasn't been the healthiest, so there are question marks there too. But I think Boyd is the safest player in that deal, and that's why I like it.
I think it kind of goes back to where everybody wanted to, say that they wouldn't give Sanders a workload, and then they did give him the workload, but then he gets banged. So do they go back and be like, okay, maybe we shouldn't give him this big workload? To where initially I am forever and always a redraft player. Initially I'm like, give me the Miles Sanders side all day. But as Marvin was talking, I was like, well, I guess technically Chase Edmonds could be Miles Sanders for the rest of this year and then next year.
Yep.
Plus I'm getting Tyler Boyd and a better draft pick. So yeah, I think I want that side easy.
Josh?
All right. So I'm going to say that I traded the Boyd side to
Because
get
you're an
Miles
Eagles
Sanders.
fan.
No, it's not just because I'm an Eagles fan.
Well,
But
plays
here's-
into it, definitely.
Here's my depth. All right. So we start 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, 2 flex, and then the 1 super flex spot. So my wide receiver core is Calvin Ridley, DJ Moore, Deontay Johnson, Jalen Reagor, Jarvis Landry, Devontae Parker, and Darius Slayton.
You had me at Jalen Reagor.
So by all means, like Boyd, as much as I love him as a player, because I also have Joe Burrow in this league, he's expendable.
Mm-hmm.
I have Wentz, so keeping Reagor, like I like that pairing as well, and I have Kyler Murray at quarterback. I needed a running back because my starting running backs, I was down to DeAndre Swift, James White, and like Alexander Madison. And I have
Chase
Austin
Edmonds.
Eckler, who was hurt. Oh, and I have Kenyon Drake, by the way.
Oh, there you
So-
go. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So that for me, that was why I needed to go get the running back, right?
Sure.
That
Yeah.
being said, the next trade that you'll see is what I was able to get for Austin Eckler.
So, for
Love it.
Austin Eckler,
So I basically reshaped my entire running back room with this deal.
for Austin Eckler, James Robinson, Daryl Henderson, and a late 2021 second-round pick. I would much rather have the James Robinson, Daryl Henderson, and the late 2021 second-round pick. Josh, we obviously know which side you would rather have because you made the trade. But from Ryan and Marvin down there in the basement, what are your thoughts there?
Go ahead, Ryan. Go ahead.
We're so polite with the fantasy.
No,
Someone take over. Someone take over. Be mean.
I guess for what you did for this year, I like it. I am not convinced James Robinson has the job next year. I'm not convinced Henderson has the job next year, whereas Austin Eckler's role is secure. Getting that draft pick back is huge, though, and getting all that for Eckler. I'm making that trade every time I feel better about it in a redraft short term than I do in a dynasty.
Yep, I agree there. I mean, you're getting Miles Sanders, so it sounds like you are. Did you mention you're definitely contending? It sounds like you're a playoff team. So I think this definitely helps you this year. And I'm always about, dynasty, we look forward to it too, but I think that can be to a fault as well, where you're just looking forward all the time. I think you got to look at this year as well. And I think getting Miles Sanders, who's hopefully coming back soon, and then James Robinson, Daryl Henderson, who's getting the workload right now. I think that'll help you a ton. And with those wide receivers that you already have, I think that complements your team and rounds you out pretty well. So I like it.
Yeah. And then from our buddy Lee over on YouTube, this is a great question.
I was literally asking us to answer that in the chat.
Great question, Ryan. I'm on it, buddy. Don't you worry.
It's almost like you do this. You're so.
I know.
Good.
It's almost like I'm a just great host over here.
Yeah.
Been doing this for 3.5 years. All right, Lee. How does he get into Dynasty? Loves fantasy football, but he has no idea how to make the leap into the part that most people agree is the best part. Does he have to learn a lot more about college football? So I'll field this one because Lee, I am also I mean Ryan and Josh are also relatively new to Dynasty. Ryan is the same as me. We were redraft always, and when I joined Club Fantasy is when Josh kind of pulled me into Dynasty. Exact same thing as Ryan.
Yeah, fantasy footballers, writers league, first year. They're like, we're doing a Dynasty. I was like, okay, well I guess I'm in Dynasty now.
Yeah. And he says he's a Nebraska fan and he kind of follows the Big Ten, but that's about it. Lee, I am a nobody fan and watch the national championship. That's the extent of my college football knowledge.
Same thing.
I think the biggest thing is you already know the big name guys that are going to come out of college football. You know these guys, right? They're going to show up at the combine. They're the most talked about guys. They're the projected for Mel Kiper, all these guys. I think a lot of it is knowing just NFL football in general. And then when it comes to drafting, like Lee, I don't know anything about college football. Josh can attest. I am a very good rookie drafter. I just don't hang on to my players long enough.
He doesn't have patience.
I have zero patience, Lee. Zero patience. My drafting is really good. I just need to hold on to my players. So no, I don't think you need to be a college football fan. I think a lot of it
doesn't hurt.
No, it definitely does not hurt.
Definitely doesn't hurt.
No, it doesn't hurt. But
with so much information out there to consume from so many different sites,
like
you
Marvin.
can get a good idea. Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Marvin,
dude, by the way, and I didn't get a chance to say this before. Your Dynasty report, the weekly report you do with the fantasy footballers is absolutely fantastic. I love it.
I appreciate that.
Kudos,
Thank
man.
you.
Kudos.
Thank you.
But sites like Dynasty Nerds, DLF, Dynasty Trades, there's so many different sites out there that specialize in Dynasty, and even sites like the Fantasy Footballer, sites like us, Club Fantasy. We have writers that will tackle that information. Yep. There's certain sites obviously that do a much greater deep dive. I know Dynasty Nerds, they have an entire film room set up where you can literally go through and watch film on some of these incoming players, and you can kind of be a judge of, hey, you know what, this guy's got it. And then then looking at where they land in the draft, and you're like, oh, how can that correspond with what team they landed on? Oh, I really like this person. I think they could, absolutely blow up. So there's different things that you can do, but you just have to be a sponge. You have to consume as much information as possible and not be willing. You have to be willing to fail. You're going to lose trades when you start. You're going to get overexcited about certain players, and you also can't be afraid to let go of someone.
Yeah.
Because just as much as you're preparing for 2, 3, 4 years down the road, you're also still trying to win now. So you have to be able to balance the now with the future.
The only thing I want to add is also make sure you're ready to do fantasy football 12 months a year.
Yes.
If you
Oh my God,
prefer-
inactivity in a dynasty league is the worst.
Yeah, so you could get into a super boring league, but I'm hoping you don't get into that league. But you also have to be ready to check a team all throughout the offseason. Look for trade offers. Be ready to make those trade offers. Be ready for a draft in May that you have been drafting August your entire life. Be ready to not draft in August. It's a little bit of a different mindset. So that's the one thing is if you love fantasy football from August to December and then January you wipe your hands of it, don't dive into Dynasty. It's not for you. But if you wish there were more, if you get in the right dynasty league, there's more. There's usually an active chat. There's always trade offers going on. The tides change when the news changes. So every time you see this meaningless news in February, you're going to get 5 trade offers because of it in a dynasty league. So, and I'll let Marvin jump in.
I think you guys covered it perfectly. I think you just have to remember to stay active and to continuously just soak in information, like Josh said. Just take in everything that's out there. A lot of people are evaluating prospects. Watch that and watch it for yourself as well, and make your own opinions. It's okay to disagree with rankings. It's okay if you liked Clyde Edwards-Helaire more than Jonathan Taylor. That's okay. It's totally fine. And
clearly,
and and like you said, just stay involved because you want to take advantage of those ebbs and flows in Dynasty where guys, their values skyrocket and then they dip again. Like guys that are injured right now are really low. Like for Dynasty, those are some of the guys I'd look at right now in season. Trade for them now, because once you get that clean bill of health for Saquon, their value is going to skyrocket again. So those are, just be engaged and continue to communicate. And I think that's one of the biggest things with dynasties: communicate. Don't just, when someone sends you a trade offer and they send you a DM, respond back, engage, negotiate. I think that's the best part of dynasty, in my opinion, is just building that group and camaraderie with your dynasty managers.
Boom.
Could have been said more beautifully.
Yeah, always be willing to communicate. My biggest pet peeve is when you send somebody a trade offer, they don't respond to the trade offer, but then they just hit decline, and then that's that. It's like, you can literally take 3 seconds to send me a DM on Sleeper and be like, hey man, saw your offer, really wasn't for me, I'm a lot higher on so-and-so. Boom. Takes 5 seconds.
Yep. And now
Not
for my
that
weekly PSA, Dr. Octagon, there's a trade offer out there for you. I know you don't listen to our show, but for the love of God, I want Terry McLaurin.
He made a free agent move. I reminded him that I sent him a trade as well, and then updated 12 hours later. He has not accepted nor denied my trade. Also, I want to bring up something with Josh. Josh, I've sent you multiple trades, and all you've done is decline them. You have not talked to me.
I mean,
Every
you're
week.
sending me a trade offer for a tight end when I already have 4 of them rostered. I think it's pretty
Hypocrite.
obvious that I'm not interested. So.
Hypocrite. You could tell me. I don't know. Josh,
You're just throwing out blind offers, dude.
Josh, I am trying to pawn Jared Cook off on someone. I don't want him anymore.
I want to
Take him.
I'm going to jump in for Lee real quick. Lee, I believe you're on Twitter. I think you've hit us up on Twitter before.
Yes.
In the off season, this is going to sound weird, but you can search Twitter, search fantasy football and the word orphan, and you will find a bunch of leagues that are looking for teams to jump in, and they'll break down all the rules and everything for you. So that's where you would kind of find a league if you can't get one locally or with friends.
Keep in touch with us, Lee. Dr. Octagon may get the boot after this. So you may be welcome.
Contingent on you trading me Terry McLaurin.
Yes, you may be welcome in the Club Fantasy Dynasty League. We appreciate it. Okay, so speaking of a bunch of rookies drafted back in May, at least for Dynasty purposes, there were plenty of rookies basically that haven't shot out of the gate as expected. Playtime and injury like Cam Akers or even just straight up injury like a Mims or a Michael Pittman. Who are you looking to scoop up, and realistically, what are you actually looking to get them for? Marvin, I'll start with you. Your guy is Cam Akers.
Yeah, so Cam Akers is someone I'm not ready to give up yet. For a reasonable price, I would be interested in trading for him, because what the small sample size that we've seen of him, he's looked great. He's had flashes of just elusiveness and just that ability to make guys miss and take carries that you might think might just go for 3 yards, but it'll go for more. And I know he's still young and he's not getting the workload, and that's the tough part. But one of the things I was looking at with him is his evaded tackles per touch, which is at 32.4%, which is really high. That's dead even with Kamara. It's higher than guys like Josh Jacobs, higher than guys like Miles Sanders, Derrick Henry, Zeke, though that might not be as surprising after what we've seen. But he's been good, and he's been creating yards above and beyond what the line's giving him. And it's just, the problem is he's getting 6 carries a game, maybe less in some cases. So I think now's the time to get him, and I think they're just easing him in. I definitely think that, and I think it's the same situation with J.K. Dobbins, where we always saw that he was efficient with the workload that he got. And we saw it this last week. He got 15, 16 touches and performed really well. I think with Akers, we're going to hopefully see the same thing with, even though he's going to get an increased workload, his efficiency will maintain and he'll look great. But when that happens, I don't know. But I think that presents a great trading window at this time when his value is really low. And, I'm thinking he went in the late first round in some Superflex leagues. Those are likely contenders right now. They might be getting impatient because they want someone to produce now. So with all these, with COVID and everything, guys getting injured, if you can trade David Johnson and 2 second-round picks for Cam Akers, I would do that 100%, because David Johnson's an older guy. I don't know if that'll necessarily work. You got to feel it out, see what that manager is willing to receive. But if you can trade for him while his value is at its lowest, I would absolutely do that right now.
Yeah, I've definitely sent out a few feelers for Cam Akers, because to me it has Daryl Henderson written all over it. I mean, just remember back in 2019, everybody was like, "Oh, we got to draft Daryl Henderson." So many drafts I was witnessing, he was going in the first round, because everybody was like, "Oh, we got to cuff Gurley. We got to cuff Gurley with the arthritic knee. He's going to get an opportunity." Didn't see any chances, but now look at him this year. We could very well see a very similar situation next year with Cam Akers, and they finally decide to phase out Malcolm Brown, and then it just becomes the Akers and Henderson show. And you can utilize both those guys in similar roles, because Akers as well as Henderson are both talented between the tackles and shedding tacklers, but also in the passing game, and they can be interchangeable that way.
I don't have much to add, but I do want to throw out the extremely interesting type of offer Marvin threw out. As a guy who approaches Dynasty a lot like redraft, if I was a contending team and someone offered me DJ and 2 2s, I would smash accept on that. You probably don't even need to offer both 2s. You could probably do 1 and still get a pretty quick accept. So.
Even better. There you go. I'll take it.
Yeah. Well, no, that's what I want to throw it out there for you, because I'll be honest, you're convincing me here, because again, I look at it as redraft and I don't want anything to do with Cam Akers. So I have to think in the long term. And so you're talking to me about, well, maybe I do want to, but then when you threw out the offer, I'm like, God, I would never pay that. But then if I'm on the other end of that, I'm like, yes, I'll take that. So it's an interesting way of looking at it, especially, and I think you hit a great point. If they're a contender, just speaking from myself, Cam Akers means nothing to them right now, and they would love to get another piece. So,
Great.
Awesome. All right, Ryan, your guy is Jalen Reagor.
Brings a smile to my face.
What's funny is this show came around at the perfect time, because I've been beating this drum for redraft already. And if you want a guy in redraft, especially a rookie, you definitely want him in Dynasty. So the biggest thing for me is we've only really seen him on the field twice this year, and he's looked good. He didn't do a lot yardage wise last week, but they didn't really have to, and he scored in his first game back. But more importantly, and this is something I always hammer, and I'm really looking at this on the short term, but I'll kind of get into the long term. The Eagles have the best schedule for wide receivers from week 10 to week 16. If you want to win a championship this year, plugging Reagor in as your wide receiver 3 is the perfect way to do that. Travis Fulgham's likely to be the wide receiver one there, but that's even better because then Reagor's going to be seeing guys regularly that he can beat with no safety help. We are forgetting how fast he is because right now he hasn't had to show it. With what him and Fulgham are perfect complements. They remind me honestly of Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins, and we love them. We just need Wentz to get them the ball the way Burrow gets them the ball. It's going to be a really interesting end of this season, but that schedule is just so juicy. Starting right out of the gate, it goes Giants, Cleveland, Seattle, I believe. You couldn't ask for a better schedule, especially since you're going to see CB1s. Cleveland and the Giants have pretty decent first corners. Those guys are going to be on Fulgham, at least for these first couple of games, because Reagor's not drawing that type of attention yet. And basically, I don't really have much to say for him dynasty-wise, except for Wentz is young, coach isn't going anywhere, Reagor's crazy young, obviously. You want young wide receivers in dynasty, go get Jalen Reagor. Do it right now on a team who needs somebody this week, because he can't play this week, and they're upset about it. And Joe asked in the doc, what's our cost? I will basically pay whatever it takes right now. I have him in most leagues. But leagues where I don't.
Is to get him in the offseason.
So I will be
that firsthand, Ryan.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think Josh has him in 2 of the dynasties I'm in with Josh. I'm not even sending offers because it's not, when I say whatever it takes, there's within reason, and I'm a contender, so I'm not going to just sabotage myself. But in the leagues where I'm not with Josh, I'm going to continue to send escalating offers until they send yes. He is a guy I want on my team. So.
Yeah, it was our rookie draft, and Ryan was sitting at 9, and I was like, I need to get into the first round. I've got to get Jalen Reagor. And Ryan was all about Keyshawn Vaughn. Gotta go. I got to get my guy. And I was like, all right, what's it going to cost me to get this pick? He goes,
I was going to take Keyshawn Vaughn at 1-9, folks. This
Yeah.
is how friggin' stupid I am.
Yeah. And he's like, all right, first next year and Tyler Lockett. And I started to think about it because I had some good depth. I've got Devontae Adams. I had DJ Moore, Mike Williams, Corey Davis, some other guys in Tyler Lockett, but who was very disappointing towards the end of the year. With DK, it was like, the emergence there, I was like, man, I don't know if I can trust Tyler Lockett. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to get my guy because I've got Wentz. So I made the deal. And of course, Lockett shot out of the gate like, crap. And, Reagor's been obviously hurt. So I'm like, damn, I probably lost that trade in the short term, but I'm okay. I'm feeling
it's probably going to flip.
I got that first round pick back anyway. So
I'd say it's going to flip on its head in the second half of the season. So
I just want to bring this up because I brought it up with Denzel Mims. Mims comes from Baylor. Baylor has not produced an NFL caliber wide receiver ever.
Whoa. Josh Gordon would like a word for 1 year.
For 1 year. Here, according to a TCU website, are your top 5 Horned Frogs wide receivers of all time. Mike Renfro from the 70s.
I was going to say.
Jeremy Curley.
Yes.
2. Jeremy Curley. Philip Epps from the 80s. Josh Doxson is 4. Ladies and gentlemen, Josh Doxson. I'll repeat that name one more time.
Shouldn't Reagor already be ahead of Doxson?
I'll repeat that one more time. First round pick, 22nd overall, Josh Doxson. TCU cannot produce wide receivers. It's that simple. It's just that simple. They can't produce receivers. I'm not saying Reagor's going to be bad by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not selling the house to go get Jalen Reagor because I'm still not convinced on that Eagles offense. And I'm not convinced on Reagor as a whole. Everyone loved his speed, loved his demeanor. The kid works hard. I can't argue with that. I'm not ready to sell the farm for Jalen Reagor yet.
My only counter to the ridiculous argument is
not ridiculous. Not ridiculous.
Who had Georgia Tech produced before Calvin Johnson at wide receiver?
Sure.
Who has Mississippi Valley State produced besides Jerry Rice?
Listen, Ryan,
Like, get out of here.
There are always anomalies, right?
Yeah,
There's
Jalen Reagor. Go get him.
Sure. Okay. We'll see. We'll see. Jalen Reagor will probably go down as the best TCU wide receiver drafted into the NFL because that's his competition.
Well, he's already number 4. I don't care what that list says.
Well, number 5 was Jason Tucker.
Sure.
He played 2 seasons with the Cowboys. That's how good TCU has been.
That list was
See what we
clearly
have to deal with, Marvin? The logic, let me tell you.
I'm sorry, guys. That's rough.
I'm just gonna throw this out there. Tell me I'm wrong by the end of Denzel Mims' career. Tell me I'm wrong. Has Baylor ever produced a good offensive weapon in the NFL for an actual career, not Robert Griffin III?
Well, I'm not trying to fight with you about Mims. I'm fighting you with Reagor. First of all, Mims already got the Adam Gase curse. So
that's fair.
He's done.
Well, he's going to get the 5th-year breakout. So Mims will get the 5th-year breakout.
He's absolutely on the Corey Davis plan.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what is it? Was it
the Corey Davis, Devontae Parker plan?
Yep.
What's it in? This is 2024, right? Will be his 5th-year breakout. Sign him up.
So exactly 3 years from now, we're going to be like, you need to go buy Denzel Mims.
Go buy Denzel Mims. It's his 5th-year breakout. But then the last guy, this is a guy I'm perfectly okay with because Clemson produces receivers. DeAndre Hopkins, Sammy Watkins, you name it.
Oh, yeah, he's been a model consistency, let me tell you.
He burned the shit out of Richard Sherman in the Super Bowl.
That's not hard to do. Sherman is not fast.
Josh, Sammy Watkins, Mike Renfro. That's just, it's not even close. Not even close. Tell me about T. Higgins.
Anytime you've got a young wide receiver paired with a top overall pick at quarterback, I want a piece of that. Higgins is already a top 24 wide receiver through 8 weeks this year, and he got off to a slow start. We're seeing the downswing of AJ Green's career, and so who's it going to be? It's going to be Higgins. It's going to be Boyd. I will say that if your dynasty league does not have a trade deadline, wait to maybe make some offers in the fantasy playoffs because T. Higgins' schedule is rough. Coming out of their bye week, they get the Steelers. They get Washington, who's allowed the fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. The Giants should be a decent matchup. The Dolphins have been one of the better defenses this year. You get the Cowboys, obviously a great matchup. But then the Steelers and week 17 is against the Ravens. They got the Texans thrown in there. So it's going to be a lot of like very hit or miss games that Higgins could very well ghost. So you might be able to maybe get him cheaper later. He's obviously going to be a lot more expensive now. And Sam, if you're listening, I know you know this because this is your guy and you've paid the farm to get him in every league. But again, young, talented wide receiver paired with a superstar potential quarterback that's already looking like a superstar quarterback. I want all of that in my lineups. So be prepared to throw out a first plus.
I'd do it. I'd do it.
Sure. And that's the thing too, is so many dynasty players, they don't necessarily think about what they're giving up. They think about what they're getting in return based on what they spent to get that player.
Yep.
So like if you spent a second rounder on T. Higgins, but now I'm turning that second into a first plus another veteran that can help me depth wise, they're in their head. That's like, oh, that's max value. Perfect. Gimme. They're not thinking 3 or 4 years down the road. So hopefully the guy or girl that has Higgins on their team and you make those types of offers, they're thinking in those terms and it'll make it easier for you.
Not to mention, if you're thinking long-term, if you wait even longer around combine time and around draft time, your draft picks become so valuable because people are so infatuated with these rookies that they forget they were just as infatuated with T. Higgins a year ago. But they're like, oh, I can just trade him and get a 1 so I can get the new shiny toy. do that trade all.
Well, and that's what I'm getting at. If
Yep.
we're looking at Higgins as a top 24 wide receiver right now, what happens with that stronger strength of schedule toward to close out the year, and he's now wide receiver 40 by year's end? People aren't going to have the same opinion of him because he ended on a sour note. So that leaves a sour taste in their mind because they're trotting him out week in and week out, and he's disappointing them.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And he's one of the guys I've definitely been targeting in a bunch of dynasty leagues because for guys like him, we talked about Denzel Mims a little bit, who we haven't seen much of, but we've seen it from Higgins. And that to me is enough just to see the production he's had, how he's looked on the field. His chemistry with Burrow is great. So to me, spend up to get him, because what we've seen is just kind of scratching the surface, because AJ Green's still commanding targets, whether we want it or not. He's still commanding air yards, whether we want it or not. Next year, that won't be the case, hopefully. And it will be T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. And then there's that opportunity there. And Burrow's just going to get better. Hopefully they fix up that offensive line via the draft or however else free agency. But I definitely think I love Josh's point where you wait until the end of the year, because people start to forget how good they were in the season, and everyone wants that shiny new toy. I agree. Get the guys that we've actually seen produce versus banking on someone who was good in college, but that doesn't always translate, right? So I've seen it from T. Higgins. Go after him, get him. Yeah, easy as that.
T. Higgins, Hunter Renfrow, Sammy Watkins, Martavis Bryant, DeAndre Hopkins, Mike Williams.
I was like, what are we talking about?
Just some of the names that went to Clemson. Just some of the names. Notice how Marvin said he's seen him do it in the pros, and he's seen him do it in college as well, but hasn't seen some other players do it in the pros. I'm just saying, there's a pattern. Colleges attract players based off of previous hit. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. And that's just in the last 7 years at Clemson. That's all I'm saying. There is a trend, and we will see that trend with Arizona State and Stanford as we get into second-year players we're ready to give the boot. Because at this point, whether it just be the offense doesn't seem to just be utilizing their skill set, it could be they didn't pan out. Like their skill hasn't exactly translated to the NFL just yet at this moment. And at this point, we're just projecting into the future that, player X, there's no shot he gets it together. And if he does, it's going to be way later down the line. And you're not going to be mad at that point if you let him go for pennies, essentially. So Marvin, we'll start with you. And Josh echoes this sentiment a lot because he says so much of this. It is his beloved Philadelphia Eagles wide receiver, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside.
Yes. So unfortunately, I think I'm ready to not necessarily, definitely don't drop him in dynasty leagues or anything. Hold on to him because you never know what happens in year 3 or year 4. But I'm not, at this point, I'm not banking on him producing or breaking out this year, not even next year. And, regardless of the draft capital that was invested in him with a second round pick, it's unfortunate to see him average the 6th lowest snap percentage among Eagles wide receivers. And you have guys like Deshaun Jackson, John Hightower averaging more snaps than him. And this was kind of the perfect, to me, in my opinion, I thought was the perfect kind of environment and opportunity for him to step in if he was performing well, because Jackson was injured, Deshaun Jackson, Jalen Reagor, Alshon Jeffrey, we haven't seen him yet. And now everyone's getting healthier again. Reagor's back. Fulgham's emerged, and he's looked great. I definitely agree that he's the one going forward, at least for this year. So there's not a lot of opportunity left. And I think this was his chance to perform and take over if he had the ability to. And unfortunately, it's not looking like it's going to pan out for him. And I still think this offense really runs through the tight end position. I think when we get Ertz back, and hasn't looked that great, but when Goddard is back and healthy and Ertz is back, I think it's just going to be crowded. And I'm not sure he gets a lot of targets for the rest of the year. And we'll see about next year, but I'm not too optimistic going forward. I'd love your guys' opinion because I know there are Eagles fans here. So,
well, Eagles fan.
Yeah, Eagles fan.
Okay.
Only
Just
Josh.
got one. Okay.
I was an Eagles fan Huge Donovan McNabb fan. I felt
Okay.
like they did McNabb dirty, so now I root for my fantasy team, and that's it. So.
All right, there you go.
But I'll just throw in my 2 cents and then let Josh get away. Completely agree, and I actually did cut him off of a very stacked roster in the league I'm in with these guys, to where I just didn't see a path where he was going to be anything meaningful for me, and I couldn't get a trade out of him. So while you said don't cut him, I'm not even mad if you cut him at this point. It just depends
and
on
I think a lot of it
position,
just depends on the depth of the roster. I mean,
Yeah.
you're going to have some dynasty leagues. Like when I started this one, I was in more of a redraft mindset, so we only have 20 bench spots and then the 4 taxi squad spots. But there are some dynasty leagues where I'm in that have 24, 28 bench spots plus a taxi squad.
Mhm.
So yeah, like in deeper benches, sure, you have the ability to stash him and not just drop him and be more patient. But yeah, I have zero issue dropping him outright. Just, I mean, like we talk about if Whiteside, Arcega Whiteside was going to pop, it was this year because of the injuries. He had that same opportunity last year.
Yeah.
The Eagles were absolutely savaged with injuries. That's the only reason we even know the name Greg Ward at this point.
Yeah.
It's the same reason why this year we know the name Travis Fulgham, because everybody has been hurt. And this has been going on since the year we won the Super Bowl.
And then how
We
does
just
he
cannot
not
stay healthy.
And how does he not beat out?
Exactly. When
Ward,
you're a
who-
second round pick and you have that draft capital, how are you not beating out players that were literally selling insurance and bagging groceries the week and a half before
And playing quarterback in college.
and playing? Exactly. So it's like, and when I look back on, you know, because I know Pro Football Focus was huge on Arcega Whiteside. Like, I think he was their second highest graded wide receiver going into that draft class. They
Josh,
absolutely loved him.
It wasn't just them. There were a bunch of people that had Whiteside as the biggest sleeper receiver out of that draft.
And a lot of it really just came down to the fact that he was so good in contested catches. He's not even doing that in the NFL.
Terrible. He's absolutely
He's
terrible.
absolutely terrible. And I'm just like, dude, what are we doing? Like, I remember when we drafted him, like, because I wasn't the biggest DK guy, because I just felt like he was such a flash in the pan. Like, I understood the measurables. Like, I get it. The guy's a freak of nature. And it was always like, yeah, if he can put it together. But I loved A.J. Brown. He was my guy from Ole Miss. I was like, oh, that's the guy. That's the guy that you want right there.
They're both going to be effing
And they're
studs.
both going to be studs in this league. But I digress. Anyway, but like, you know, we take him over Metcalf, which obviously is the big thing in Philly. Everybody wants to talk about, like, oh, dude, we passed on DK Metcalf to get this guy. Like, what the hell are we doing? Like, Howie Roseman sucks. He can't do, you know, it's just one thing after another. But like, you're not seeing this basketball ability. And I remember when we drafted him, it was like, oh, we can throw out a freaking basketball team in the red zone. We've got Ertz and Goddard over 6'5". We got Arcega Whiteside. We got Jeffrey. It's jump ball city. We can't even do that. Yeah. And I'm just like, what the hell? Right. Yeah, I'm over it. I'm absolutely over it. Like, throw those jump balls to Travis Fulgham. He's coming down with them. So
our Arcega Whiteside has 2 catches for 45 yards so far this season through 8 games. And he has 2 touchdowns in his career. One coming last year against the Miami Dolphins. One this year recovering Miles Sanders' fumble forward into the end zone. So half of his touchdowns have come off fumble recoveries where nobody else was in the vicinity.
Perfect.
Exactly
what you want out of your second round pick.
Exactly. What a stat. Ryan, a guy coming from arguably the best college football program in the last 10 years, Irv Smith.
I'm just going to make this short and sweet. If you're not playing in a tight end premium, and I guess even if you are playing in a tight end premium, even in Dynasty, there's like 25 tight ends that you should find on a roster. Irv Smith is currently the tight end 41 in fantasy football. I don't see the path. They moved Stephon Diggs. Obviously, Justin Jefferson came in there and did pretty damn good. But they moved Stephon Diggs. They're not using him in any meaningful ways. And even if your path is, well, Kyle Rudolph's going to go eventually. If you take all of Kyle Rudolph's stats and give them to Irv Smith, which is not how football works, because they'll just bring in another tight end too. Even if you did do that, he's still only the tight end 21. He's not startable for you in any league. He's great depth if he didn't have any competition. And it hurts because I really thought he was going to blow up this year, regardless of dynasty. Like, as a guy who always talks about streaming tight ends, I thought Smith was going to be a guy who I was going to be able to talk about for a little while, and then he was going to become an every week starter. He doesn't deserve a roster spot in 99% of fantasy leagues right now.
He's OJ Howard light.
So Irv Smith, he has 2 startable weeks this season. Came against Seattle, the worst secondary in the NFL.
But good against tight ends, usually because they just ignore them.
Yeah, essentially.
Well, the quarterback gets to ignore them because
Yes.
all his wide receivers are open.
And Atlanta.
Terrible against the tight end.
Arguably the two of the worst defenses in the NFL, Irv Smith.
Yeah, I think they give up the most passing yards between the two of them.
Yes,
so,
they do.
yeah.
Most passing yards, yes. His other games, Green Bay, twice. Well, Green Bay's not,
They're
a
middle
world
of the
beater
road.
of a defense,
Yeah.
but you should be burning
You beat them
Green
on
Bay.
the ground. You don't beat them in the air.
Dalvin Cook, how did he do last week? Indy, who has a good defense, granted.
Best
But
defense against the tight end in football right now.
He put up 2 goose eggs against Tennessee and Houston.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and Ryan, we talked about this in the offseason when we were doing our projections for the Vikings. Like, you look at Stefanski was just an extension of Kubiak.
Yep.
Kubiak comes in. He's now the offensive coordinator. They threw the football to Rudolph and Irv Smith 41 times apiece.
Yeah.
Like, they're just not a huge part of their offense. And just like you said, you remove one of them, that doesn't mean you double up. Like, it just doesn't work that way. So looking at it in terms of that, it's and this is kind of where we get into my section where it's like any second-year tight end not named Hawkinson or Fant. Like, those were the 2 guys for me going into that tight end class last year. Everybody else was second fiddle. And we as a fantasy community, we hang on to tight ends way too damn long. Because all we want is to think that the tight end position is so much deeper than it is.
Yep.
There's like 4
not.
guys. That's it. There's 4.
Next year, every time I see that tweet, I'm going to be not a nice person about it. I'm like, we have to stop this. We are doing our readers a
And what
disservice.
sucks is this upcoming tight end class is so deep.
Oh my gosh.
It's so deep, especially at the top. Like,
Hey,
Kyle
Josh,
Pitts,
we have to
Brevin
stop
Jordan.
doing this.
Like, there's some really good, like, for me, it's going to boil down to the draft capital. Like, we saw with Howard and Evan Ingram and David Njoku, like, Ingram burst out of the gate really quick. And I think the biggest thing for him has been health and Jason Garrett thinking that he's Jason Witten, and that's just not it. Like, you need to re-scheme your offense for somebody that is so much more athletic than Jason Witten.
Yeah.
OJ Howard fell into a system with a guy that hates tight ends. And then, of course, now he gets hurt. Mm-hmm. And then with Njoku, he doesn't block. And now Stefanski wants blockers. That's the big thing. So, like, for me, Njoku could be a guy, even with Ingram, if he finds a way to stay consistently healthy. Those guys potentially could end up being, like, if they go someplace else, they could have a couple really good years. But for me, they're not really, like, dynasty guys. They're not the Kittles or the Gronks of old, or even like a Mark Andrews going forward, or Darren Waller, or right now Hawkinson and Fant. Like, those are guys that I want. Dallas Goedert being another one in dynasty.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I do want to caution though with Irv Smith is that Kyle Rudolph's contract, I believe, is they extended him, but if they were to cut him, I think after June 1 or something like that, the dead cap is pretty low, and they could save a lot starting in 2021. So it's possible there were rumors that they would try to trade him around trade deadline. That didn't really happen. I was really hopeful that they would, and I was like fielding offers for Irv Smith because I was like, oh, it's happening now. It's going to happen. And it didn't. So 2021, hopefully, but I agree. Sometimes you just have to move on and move quickly. And you can always find guys like Darren Waller, guy that popped just, out last year, popped out of nowhere. And in some of my leagues, I think he was even on waivers. And so you could have grabbed him for a couple dollars of fab, and he's your starting tight end. So you can always find guys, and it not necessarily stream, but you can find guys coming out of nowhere and guys who are quiet in the first couple of years, because tight ends do take a while to develop, and then they're your guy for the next 2 to 3 years. And if
look at Jonnu.
Yeah, right.
Jonnu's another one. I mean, this is year 4 for him, and everybody was like, oh, and I mean, I had him as a top 5 tight end going into my very early rankings. I was like, this is a guy that's going to pop. We've seen Tennessee utilize the tight end position. It's just been a waiting game with him.
Right.
And he's shown that potential this year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to a lesser extent, Mark Andrews wasn't even the first tight end taken by his own team in that draft.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
But looking at Rudolph's contract, he would be, and again, I don't know what the June 1st date would be, but it's $4.35 million in dead cap would be his hit. And I think the issue that arises there is that the NFL salary cap is supposedly going to drop $23 million.
Wow. Ooh. Wow.
So that's what I've heard.
Oh, well, I mean, it wouldn't shock me. There's hardly any fans at games. Revenue is not going to be what
point.
it is.
Revenue is down. This is not people that are like, oh, the NFL is going away. No, it's not. There's no fans in stands. They can't make money. Okay, they literally, it's impossible.
No, they're still making money, just not off the fans.
Yes, not off the fans, exactly. But ticket revenue is such a huge thing. Ticket revenue is a huge thing for a lot of these teams, and especially the league as a whole. So you look at that, $23 million, right? That's a lot of people's like quarterback contracts, or like, you know, their top receiver and running back. Like that's a lot of money. So I think you're going to see a lot of teams reluctant to cut older veterans if they have a decent, like we look at it's like, okay, it's $4.3 million in dead cap, right? Like what's that going to do? They could sign a mid-tier wide receiver for $4.3 million. So it's like, I don't know. It's like their cap hit is 9.4 with him on the roster. Without, it's 4.3. So you do technically save $5 million in that instance, but I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting with what a lot of teams do this offseason when it comes to signing players and when it comes to cutting players, especially veteran players. And if those veterans even, you know, end up getting signed by different teams. So I think it's going to be an interesting offseason, especially even from just a dynasty standpoint with how everything's going as well. And then, Josh, you talked about Hawkinson and Fant. Iowa has produced those two and George Kittle. N'Keal Harry from Arizona State, who I don't know if I'm ready. I'm ready to punt on him as a Patriot. I am not ready to punt on him as an NFL player. I just don't think he understands the playbook. It's that simple.
I think Harry's going to be a guy that we're talking about similar to Corey Davis.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be on that plan. We've seen Bill Belichick move on from high draft picks very quickly. And the way that Harry has, in a way, underperformed and not been available, same thing with Sony Michel. I would not be shocked at all to see Bill Belichick move on from both of those guys after this offseason.
I told you at the beginning of the season, before there was even a snap taken, Damian Harris takes Sony Michel's job by week 8.
And he's done it.
What has he done? It's exactly what he did. It's because Sony Michel's terrible at his job.
But he's also been hurt. That's helped.
Terrible at his job.
And has COVID.
Guys. Sony Michel runs like he has 2 garbage cans blocking.
He's wearing
his
a Bengals jersey, Marvin, but I swear he's a Patriots fan.
Oh my God. Sony Michel. The epitome of Sony Michel is they hand him the ball on the 1-yard line. He moves back to the 3. They bring in Rex Burkhead. Burkhead gets the ball back to the 1. They bring in Michel. He gets it back to the 3. What? Josh. Oh, God.
When they should have just gave it to James White to begin with.
Exactly, Ryan. Thank you. Need to reacquaint
No, I mean, with Harry, it's definitely like, it's one of those things where because he has that draft capital, it's so hard to want to cut bait on him because he was a first-round pick.
You know Bill doesn't care.
I know that Bill doesn't, but dynasty managers do.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. They do. They care about that. Like, that's why I've had Corey Davis on my freaking bench for 4 years. Because he was a top 5 pick. You're holding on to that hope. And finally, I'm putting in my starting lineup this week.
After all these years.
After all these years, it's finally come to fruition. Anyway,
You just had to wait a couple years. I mean, no big
Right,
deal, right?
and Joe, this is what we talk about. Patience, my man. Patience.
Dude, I have zero patience for a receiver to develop over 4 years, sir.
But
Oh my
I think
God.
what's really hurt N'Keal Harry has been obviously the injuries with him, but the inconsistency at quarterback. Like he missed all of last year. Brady really faded down the stretch. Cam Newton has just he's looked like a shell of himself. And then it becomes, okay, if he somehow does make it to next year, what type of quarterback situation are we looking at in New England? We have no idea.
Wait till we get to the bold predictions that we're about to get to very soon. 'Cause,
So, but like
I'll
that,
tell
and
you.
that's really the point I'm getting at. Like, I know there's some dynasty leagues with taxi squads where you can only put rookies on. Then there are some taxi squads where it's only up to 3 years of availability. If I'm in a league like that, or one that just does not care the age range of the players on your taxi squad, drop N'Keal Harry there and just let it ride. Yeah. And I think that's really your best case scenario at this point. And Hollywood Brown's another one. I know you didn't. I don't know what you were going to set up with that, Joe. But I wasn't buying it when he was a first round pick. I think he will be a good NFL wide receiver because of what he can do to pull a defense away from whatever they need. But he will not be a good fantasy asset.
The only thing I'll throw out with us kind of moving on is JJW and Irv Smith might be drops. N'Keal Harry and Hollywood Brown and Hollywood especially, trade them. There's a market out there for those names. So.
Yeah. And Josh, my other bold predictions about the Ravens offense. So I'll cover both of these guys. But quickly before we head into our bold predictions to end the show, running backs. Expiring on contracts. Talked about these 4 guys. Aaron Jones, Marvin, your boy Aaron Jones with your Packers. Chris Carson, James Conner, Leonard Fournette. Josh, I'm assuming these rankings are standard then PPR, correct?
No, it's currently and then points per game.
Okay, thank you. So currently Aaron Jones is RB9, points per game is RB4.
This was before Thursday.
This is before Thursday, okay? Chris Carson, 14 overall, 7 in points per game. James Conner is 12 for both. Leonard Fournette, 45 overall, 37 in points per game. So you're currently looking at, just points per game wise, 3 RB1s. And Leonard Fournette's your, occasional flex bench warmer guy. Let's start with Aaron Jones because obviously he's the biggest name out of this entire bunch. Ryan said it that Aaron Jones in redraft should not have been faded as much as he was. Marvin, I don't know the Packers' philosophy on re-signing running backs, but I'd imagine this guy from UTEP should probably get re-signed to a decent contract because it's Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, and Allen Lazard when he comes back. But that's it. Like, that's their offense, right? They need Aaron Jones for this to actually run and keep Aaron Rodgers.
Sunglasses.
Yes.
Oh yeah, future's bright for him. No, he definitely should be re-signed. Still blows my mind why they spent a 2nd-round pick on A.J. Dillon. I'm not sure why they did that. That leads me to believe they might not re-sign him, which I think would be a mistake because he's so efficient. I mean, one of the most efficient running backs ever since joining the league. He's so good and efficient in the red zone. I mean, I can't imagine there's a running back out there right now that you can grab that's better than him off free agency. And you could argue with the draft, but they already invested in AJ Dillon. I just can't imagine they draft another running back here. So to me, the best option, if they want Aaron Rodgers to win another Super Bowl, it's Aaron Jones because he's just great for that team. He's great for fantasy. I'm still holding out hope, and I definitely think they need to re-sign him. Until then, there's some uncertainty. I do think he's talented enough that if he doesn't get re-signed by the Packers, that if he goes to a different team, like I'm not really sure where there would be an opening. We're talking about James Conner. I don't know if the Steelers have an opening. If Aaron Jones signed there for whatever reason, I'm not sure. I think he's talented enough to perform somewhere else as well. So in Dynasty, I'm not ready to fade him entirely. But as a contender, absolutely get him because I think he's about to have a great stretch for the rest of the season and win you some championships.
So here's some teams just looking at running backs that currently have expiring contracts or low name running backs, teams that may not have a true RB1. Seattle Seahawks. How about the Miami Dolphins for Aaron Jones? I'm just like looking at it, right? They have an abundance of cap space.
Yeah.
An abundance of draft capital as well, so they could potentially use a first-round pick. Remember, they have Houston's first-round pick as well, so they could potentially use it on a guy like Chuba Hubbard, Travis Etienne, Najee Harris, like any of those guys. The pick of the litter, essentially. They have 2 first-round picks. Or they could go spend some money and get Aaron Jones, because I don't think anybody here is saying that Myles Gaskin should start over Aaron Jones. No. So you look at it, it says...
He's been a breath of fresh air for them.
I mean, Josh, anything is a breath of fresh air in that backfield.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, the point I'm getting at is that if you get that type of production out of a 7th-round pick,
I would say he's dirt cheap.
Why go out and spend 10, 12 million on a running back?
Sure. No, and
and that's the logic for me with teams right now.
Sure.
It's the same thing with Jacksonville. Like, why are we going to pay Fournette on our 4th year, heading into a 5th year, whatever, and we're getting better production out of an undrafted free agent?
I think the most realistic destination is he ends up back in Green Bay. I can't see him leaving.
Especially because he's going to want to get paid like Kamara, like Zeke. Like he's going to want one of these upper echelon contracts. And smart teams will not spend that type of money on those players.
Well, that's what leads me to believe he doesn't stay in Green Bay, because like Marvin brought up, they just dropped a 2nd-round pick on another running back.
Because they think they can replicate Derrick Henry. That's why.
And and regardless of how you feel about
Dylan
that,
is not that good.
Yeah. But regardless of how you feel about that, and Aaron Jones should mean the world to them. Yeah. But they've proven time and time again he kind of doesn't. And so right. You might have, and I think we're past the days of people just flat out backing up the Brinks truck, but you're going to have a team that's probably going to be willing to pay more for Aaron Jones than Green Bay is. Mm-hmm. And if he feels disrespected enough over these last 3 years,
he'll take the money and go.
He takes the money and runs. So
here's your top. Go ahead, Marvin.
No, I just wanted to add Jamal Williams is also free agent, which makes me wonder, are they going to just sign the cheaper running back here?
Yeah.
And then you have A.J. Dillon, you have that running back committee, which I wouldn't like that as a Packer fan for fantasy, but that might be the smarter route for the team.
And then maybe
Williams hasn't been terrible.
Jamal Williams is not bad by any stretch of the imagination.
He's not bad, but he's not great.
He's good for his role.
He's great for his role.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you figure that A.J. Dillon can be a sort of like bell cow in the sense that, he can work his way up to 20 carries a game. You sprinkle in 10, 12, 15 touches for Williams and let that offense essentially run through the running back, which is kind of what LaFleur seems to want to do outside of just throwing to Devontae Adams.
So, again, this is very early. I'm just going to say the top 5 teams right now currently in cap space for 2021 consist of the Jacksonville Jaguars, New York Jets, Indianapolis Colts, New England Patriots, Washington Football Team. The Jaguars and Jets are legit options that need a running back. The Green Bay Packers are 22nd with just $2.8 million in cap space. Again, that's just very early. Obviously, they can cut players.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of restructuring this offseason.
There's definitely going to be a bunch of restructuring, but remember, that cap is going to drop, which is why they have so little cap space right there. Yeah. Right? The Jaguars were going to have over $100 million in cap space, but with that projected drop, that's why it falls that much. So Green Bay is going to be tight for cap. So if they want to re-sign Aaron Jones,
they have to get really creative.
They need to they need to cut some veterans. They need to maneuver that cap to make sure, like, okay, hey, we really need to make sure that, we re-sign this guy. And to me, they need to re-sign him. I don't think you can let him walk out of that building. He's that crucial to the team.
Can't even let him talk to another team.
Yeah, no, he's that crucial to the team. But I don't know if himself wants to wait until after the season, because I know there's some guys that are like, I'll just wait till the end of the season and negotiate my contract. I don't want to talk contract extension during the season. Some guys are like that. More power to them. I would be shocked if he doesn't get a contract extension by the end of the year.
Yeah.
In terms of like Green Bay, Aaron Jones is going to get paid no matter where he goes. I think that's a fact. He's going to get paid probably 4 years, 55, 60 million is where you're probably going to see him at.
And just to touch on one other thing, he's going to be an RB1 wherever he goes.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a nose for an end zone. I mean, of these 4 guys, Jones is the only one that I would actually be willing to part with a first-round pick to get.
Agreed.
Jones is big time. Yeah, so you talk about the other guys. Chris Carson, I think we all believe he's not going to be in Seattle next year. Seattle,
Go ahead.
I was just Seattle just doesn't normally re-sign their running backs off of rookie contracts, and especially again, Chris Carson was a 7th-round pick. He's very much outplayed his draft position where he was taken in the NFL draft. But you look at the guys behind him: Rashad Penny, DJ Dallas, Travis Homer. Cheaper, can arguably do the same thing, not to the caliber of Chris Carson, but they can do the same thing as Chris Carson, if not do some of them better, such as pass catching, route running, etc. Go ahead, Ryan.
My biggest concern is Chris Carson outside of Seattle for 2 reasons. Number one, Seattle's willing to use him in whatever way it takes to make him effective. So if he's not having a great day running the ball, they'll throw him the ball and vice versa. Number 2, Pete Carroll seems to love him and is very forgiving about his fumbling issues.
Yes.
And if he goes and plays for somebody else, you could see that forgiveness go away. And all of a sudden you're seeing a guy who's getting benched for fumbles because he put the ball on the turf, a la Ronald Jones, something like that, where it's a new coach and they're not going to give him that leeway. So he's a guy unlike Aaron Jones. If Aaron Jones ends up anywhere, I'm happy with it. If Carson ends up anywhere but with Pete Carroll in Seattle, I am red flags full tilt. Like,
I mean, just look at how impatient Bruce Arians has been with Ronald Jones.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of how other coaches feel too. Like, if you're going to continue to make these types of mistakes, you can have a seat on the bench.
Yeah. Next to James Conner here, I would be surprised if Pittsburgh doesn't re-sign him. I don't think he's going to garner top of the market money. I don't think he's earned that, honestly.
I don't think he wants to go anywhere either.
I don't think he does either. I mean, I could see him signing something similar to what Austin Eckler signed.
Sure.
Maybe $1 million or so more per year. But I think that's kind of like Connor wants to be there. They're the team that gave him a chance after, college and getting cancer and recovering and all that. And
college in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's just, he's a Pittsburgh guy. And, getting someone like Benny Snell, who in limited time this year has looked very good, and somebody that if Connor does succumb to injury again can fill in, and you have Snell, for another couple years. I think this is only the second year of his rookie contract.
Yep.
So if you structure, say, a 4-year deal with a 2-year out, then you're left with, all right, now if we want to, we can re-sign Snell or spend another draft pick. And don't forget, too, they have Anthony McFarland as well. So,
yeah. Marvin, anything?
I agree. I think he just ends up there. I think that's the best spot for him. And he's been great when on the field. So I think for fantasy and for that team, I think he won't be as expensive as an Aaron Jones, I think. So I think it'll work out for both sides, really.
Yeah. And last one, Leonard Fournette. Honestly,
he's not staying in Tampa.
He's not staying in Tampa. No, that's a fact. He's not staying in Tampa.
He hasn't looked all that great running in Tampa.
I think he's done. I really think he's done. He's going to be a 1B in an offense.
This might be one of the biggest whiffs on a prospect that we've had in a while.
I mean,
he was a top 5 pick. Granted, he was a running back, but still.
He wasn't awful, but he was not. He never played up to his draft capital.
No, absolutely not.
So
it wasn't quite Trent Richardson.
Well, I mean, can anyone really be Trent Richardson? Can you imagine, right? Trent Richardson.
At the very least, Trent Richardson fetched a first-round pick. Let's just think about that for a second.
Yeah.
Could you imagine Trent Richardson, Alabama, Leonard Fournette, LSU? Who would have thought those two guys, top 5 picks, talking about some of the biggest whiffs on prospects at that position? That's crazy. From two of the top college football programs in the country right now. Crazy to think about that.
One of my favorite stories with Trent Richardson, just to get off base for a little bit, was people were up in arms. I'm from Northeast Ohio, so we got to hear a lot about Trent Richardson. And people were up in arms when Jim Brown basically said he's just a guy. And it's like, maybe we don't doubt the greatest running back to ever play the position when he tells us that this was not a great idea.
Yep.
I didn't know Jim Brown said that.
Yep.
Wow.
Spot on.
Yeah, I would not just bat an eye at Jim Brown's words. Wow. That's pretty strong words, just saying he's an average. I mean, he was obviously right in the end.
This was after the rookie year where he looked solid or whatever, and Jim Brown was
good.
like,
That's the thing, he didn't really look solid. What do you average? Like 3.
Well, clearly, Jim Brown said, "Don't do this."
Yeah, he just found a way to find the end zone. That's the only reason he was fantasy relevant.
Listen, if Jerry Rice never played football, would you consider Jim Brown the best skill position player of all time?
You're asking 3 people that never saw him play.
We're
not that old, Joe.
Josh, I've never seen him play. I've watched tape that he's the best running back.
I am a diehard Syracuse Orangeman fan and a Northeast Ohio my whole life. I may have not have seen Jim Brown play live, but I've seen everything there is to be about Jim Brown. Jim Brown is the greatest football player to ever play football.
Unbelievable.
Ahead of Jerry Rice. He played in a different era where they knew he was getting the ball. And it
every
did
play.
not
Every
matter.
play.
My favorite, another great Jim Brown quote. I can talk Jim Brown as long as you guys could listen. Jim Brown made it a point to get up slow on every play because he didn't want the defender to know if he hurt him or not. So on every play, he got up like he was hurt because you didn't need to know if you actually did or did not. So.
The only guy I would put in the conversation, at least at that position, would be Walter Payton, because Walter Payton had probably the toughness of Jim Brown because he never went out of bounds.
Yeah.
He would always drop his shoulder, and you never saw that out of a running back. You just never saw that. Even nowadays, running backs are bitches. They don't want to put down their shoulder. You see, I mean, Derrick Henry's what, 6'2", 500 pounds. Obviously, he'll just run through you. We see a lot of, Walter Payton was not that size, and he was going up against guys.
That was always one thing that I loved about watching Adrian Peterson, because he never had it would never cross his mind, I'm lowering my shoulder and I'm doing this. But just from running backs that I have seen,
AP,
nobody holds a candle to Barry Sanders, dude.
I wasn't
just the sheer athleticism with him and the things that he could do.
Ridiculous.
I swear I saw him break his ankle 30 times and he never once did. It's unreal, the balance that he had.
So he also ran for the most negative yards in NFL history.
That's true.
He never had a good offensive line.
My dad.
Ever.
My dad, who was born in 1970, said the best running back he's ever seen play in his lifetime was Walter Payton. 1B is Barry Sanders because of what he could do.
Unreal, man.
1B is Barry Sanders. In my lifetime, it's probably Adrian Peterson. The he was just absolute.
Oh, I mean, he's
freak.
an absolute freak. Yeah, I mean,
absolute freak. Mm-hmm. Oh, I could love NFL history.
God, we could do a whole freaking couple shows on this too.
All day. All right, so I know we're over.
I want to throw one more thing out. I do not agree that Leonard Fournette is completely washed. Leonard Fournette, we actually already talked about this team, but they have too many running backs right now. If Leonard Fournette were the 1B to a guy like James Conner in Pittsburgh, a team that effectively knows how to run the football, I think he could still have fantasy relevance as an RB3. Tampa Bay was the
What would
wrong
you be
choice.
willing to trade to acquire Leonard Fournette? I think that's really the biggest question. When you
Absolutely nothing. I want nothing to do with him.
Well, I mean, and that's kind of the point that when I put this show doc together, like that
JJ
was kind of
Arcega-Whiteside.
Yeah, right. These are all guys that they're coming up on the end of their contracts, very uncertain situations. What are you really realistically willing to part with? That's why I said, like, Aaron Jones is the only one that I would actually willingly give up a first-round pick and, additional assets for. But, like, Carson, Connor, maybe a second.
If I thought my first was going to be late and I'm contending this year, I'd go get Connor.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. That's fair. He's been relatively healthy outside of week 1. So,
yeah, you're not the persona non grata for Leonard Fournette in my fantasy football teams.
I mean, if your if your rookie draft is like 5 rounds, I'd throw a 4th round pick out there and just see what happens.
I was like, I'll toss a 4th or a 5th out there for Fournette, right?
Because at the end of the day, like your even your 3rd and 4th and 5th round picks, like those are all lottery tickets themselves. Mm-hmm. If Fournette gets a fresh start somewhere else, isn't that effectively the same thing? And we've seen him be a top 5, top 10 running back in fantasy before.
Yeah.
I think that's worth it.
Before I ask Marvin his best running back he's ever seen play in his lifetime, because he didn't answer, I want to throw this out there. Remember Calvin Benjamin, his rookie year? He was good. He wasn't
Calvin.
great.
Say it right.
Calvin Benjamin.
Calvin.
He doesn't deserve Kelvin. Doesn't deserve Kelvin. But remember his rookie year, he was again not a world beater.
Was it like 1,100 yards, 11 touchdowns, or something like that? Yeah, it was insane rookie year.
Yeah, great fantasy player. Year 2, he gained like 20 pounds. What happened to Leonard Fournette? The dude ate too much McDonald's. Yeah, ate too much McDonald's. So it's like, could we be seeing with Leonard Fournette what happened with Calvin Benjamin? Guys who...
I mean, it's Jacksonville. They probably have more McDonald's than, actual, like, vegan restaurants. Let's be real.
What are you saying about Jacksonville, Josh?
Hey, I'm from Florida. I can say whatever the hell I want.
What are you saying about Jacksonville?
I have no opinion of Jacksonville.
Saying it's in the redneck part of the state? Is that what you're saying? Rude. Marvin, who was the best running back you've ever seen play in your lifetime?
So in my lifetime, I agree that Adrian Peterson, at least when I started watching football, Adrian Peterson was the guy, and he's just great. One running back that I've enjoyed who might kind of be going under the radar when you talk about one of the best, at least in the last decade, is Arian Foster. Just love watching him play in his complete game. And I mean, he's what we call obviously an outlier, right? I mean, you didn't expect necessarily to do what he did, but he was just so great and elusive, and just the way he played, it was just so fun to watch. Just a complete running back, and it's tough to see the injuries that he's had and what he could have done if he stayed healthy. But to me, I think he was on the trajectory of being one of the best in this decade, really and even for the last couple decades, if he didn't get injured, because he was just that good in the receiving game in the past, in the rushing game. So.
When you talk about zone read running backs, well, that's a mouthful. Foster could arguably be the best.
I would say him and Terrell Davis.
Yes.
I would say Terrell Davis. Right there, and Clinton Portis isn't far behind either, though.
God, he was so good.
Yeah, but
I loved watching him in college.
Yeah,
there was a string where we had like it was James, then we had Gore. We had Portis.
Willis McGahee.
McGahee was in that. Like, it was just one right after. Like, it was – oh, man. Yeah, Miami had an early claim to running back U in the early part of the 2000s, man. We were churning those guys out. Whew.
But, yeah, I mean, that's another guy, Frank Gore, not talked about enough. All right, so some bold predictions here. So is anything from a player who started hot, and will falter to a player that – may have struggled, but potentially will shine. Player X will be traded, etc. Literally anything. Come up with it. As long as it's football relevant, we'll take it. Marvin, you have A.J. Brown will be a top 5 dynasty wide receiver in ADP heading into 2021. Why?
So, I wasn't sure if this was necessarily a hot take, but I think there are so many.
Not if you ask Sam Wallace.
Oh, I am in that fan club as well because I love AJ Brown. But there's just a conversation that can be had with the top 8 or 9, and you can kind of just swap the order of those guys. But to me, if you look at the top 1, 2, and 3, I think Devontae Adams belongs there. You have DeAndre Hopkins, Tyreek tied to Mahomes for several years. I think he's up there. And then I think you can start to make arguments for the next couple of guys. And DK Metcalf, I think, has entered that conversation of being one of those top dynasty wide receivers. The thing with, Michael Thomas, we haven't seen him yet. I still think he's good, but there's the question mark with his quarterback and Drew Brees. How long, what's going to happen if he's there? How long is he going to still be playing at that level? And then, there's also Kenny Galladay. I think he belongs up there. Chris Godwin, but those two are on contract years. We talked about the limited cap space. Can those teams re-sign them with other players that they need to re-sign as well? And they might change teams, and that usually adds question marks in the offseason for some of those guys. But to me, I think AJ Brown has that combination of youth. He's has sustainability in that offense with Ryan Tannehill locked down. You have Derrick Henry, a great offense that suits his strengths in everything he does. And, last year what we saw was just his efficiency. He was so efficient. That came down this year, but he's offsetting that with wide receiver 1 volume now, and he's still excelling. And he's still that home run threat, regardless of where he catches the ball. So to me, I think he's showing us that he is a true wide receiver 1. He is a young receiver to me, and I know some people hesitate moving him up that high. I still kind of hesitate as well, but I think by the end of the year, if he keeps this up, he's playing as well as DK Metcalf, and everyone's talking about him. I think AJ Brown can be a top 5 dynasty wide receiver going into 2021. With a couple other things going around with the receivers around him. So I don't know if it's a hot take. I don't know if you guys agree, but I love AJ Brown in dynasty and going forward.
So a couple things I want to bring up. One, we had John Helmkamp on our Wednesday show, and he told us that he literally just moved DK Metcalf up to his number 1 dynasty wide receiver.
Yep.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
2, on our earlier show, Club Dynasty, 4 weeks ago, when we had
Tommy
on, this question came up with CeeDee Lamb, with how great he'd been with Dak, and it was, how many wide receivers right now in Dynasty would you take over CeeDee Lamb? I think we named like 5.
Yeah,
and I'm not even sure that AJ Brown was one of those guys. Now that I couldn't
tell you.
I think he was. No, I think he was. I think Brown. Okay. I think Brown was 5.
Okay.
But yeah, no. Tommy had, I think it was Ridley, Metcalf, Brown, and 2 others, and then it was CeeDee
Adams,
Lamb at 6.
obviously, yeah.
Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
And he had CeeDee Lamb at 6.
Just because you were wondering if it was bold, I just decided to go take a quick look. He was the wide receiver 11 going in the 3rd round of Dynasty. The wide receiver 5 would typically go at the beginning of the 2nd round. So yeah, that's a pretty bold
That's pretty
jump.
bold.
So
yeah, I mean, I'm not ready to go. I don't trust Ryan Tannehill in the slightest.
Yeah,
but
we know.
But what I love is that AJ Brown is not the first threat that defenses have to worry about.
Yeah.
Right? They have to worry about Derrick Henry.
Right.
So you're mostly going to see AJ Brown in one-on-one coverage, and I'm fully confident Brown can break off one-on-one coverage with 95% of the cornerback ones in the league.
I mean, he scored a touchdown in 4 straight games. He has 5 over his last 4 games.
Yep.
So
yeah.
They pick up his 5th-year option, so you're looking at those guys are together for 3 more years, easy, all 3 of them, if Tannehill can keep the job. So,
yeah. We all know Davis is going to be a Green Bay Packer next year. So, really,
yeah, there you go.
Why is everyone hating on Alan Lazard? He is good.
I do like him. I do like Lazard, but I love Davis, and it'd be awesome to see him there.
I think
that's what we've seen this year, really, with Davis. He operates like he's got the talent, but he operates so much better as a number 2.
Yeah,
he does.
Alan Lazard operates well anywhere. So I'm just saying,
especially on the IR.
Oh, all right.
Marvin, they have been hating on my Alan Lazard pick This entire year, they hate it. They hate it. I had him as my sleeper going into this year. Obviously, he got hurt. It's the Linda curse. Linda. It's the Linda curse. Oh my! Everyone, it's the Linda curse. But I think Lazard's going to be good in that offense. He showed it. He showed it. He's been good in that offense. Ryan, you have 2. So you talked up Jalen Reagor early, and you think Reagor is going to be a top 15 wide receiver
for the end of this year.
For the end of this year.
Yep.
And then you also say, which I'm not sure I agree with, but in a whole other world, I agree 100%. I can't decide. Jimmy Garoppolo never plays another snap for the San Francisco 49ers.
So I went and looked at the contract when I heard he was going to IR. He was $28 million of dead cap this year. It drops all the way to $2.8 million next year. So they have no reason to hold on to him. They've talked Nick Mullins up multiple times. And the other thing is, they're not going to get one of the early quarterbacks, but there are a few quarterbacks available in this draft. You could see them angle to get a quarterback and get Shanahan a guy who he can develop from day one. You've said it yourself, Joe. It looks like New England kind of Kyle Shanahan's been had. Exactly.
Jimmy G sucks.
Dude, I listen. I was mad at the return that we got, and I don't even freaking know who we drafted with that pick. Because, I said,
you turned that second round pick into like 18,000.
It was like 8. Picks. It was straight up supposed to be 8 more players. I think it was. But just in all actuality, I don't think the amount of money they're paying him versus the amount of money they can save by letting him go. I did see that they've decided he doesn't need to go to the IR. So now I feel a little worse about my prediction, but I'm going to stick with it. Never plays another snap as a 49er.
Look, I can see it because, man, we sit here and say Belichick's the greatest coach of all time, and he hasn't looked like it this year in the slightest. Like, he hasn't looked like it at all. But
he doesn't have a whole lot to work with.
No, he doesn't have a whole lot to work with either. But, the greatest coach of all time has been able to maneuver the cap, blah, blah, blah. Like, you should sit there and say, you would expect Belichick to do a little bit more. But, yeah, I mean, at this point, right, would you trade a second-round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo? As an NFL GM, would you trade a second-round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo right now?
But that's the thing, though. In some instances, when it comes to quarterbacks, it's easier. It's easier to trade high draft capital for an unknown than it is to trade said high draft capital for what we already know. Yes, sure. He did lead them to a Super Bowl, but let's be real. He didn't lead them to a Super Bowl. That was the defense.
Thank you. And the run game.
Kyle Shanahan knows how to draw up a run game. All Jimmy G needs to do is not fuck up, not make mistakes, pick his spots. That's it. And right now, he's not doing it.
Marvin knows this all too well. He had 8 passes in the NFC Championship game last year. 8.
Yeah, he didn't have to do much.
He had to turn around and hand it to Raheem Mostert, who ran for 220 yards.
Yep. Yeah, that's the beauty about that offense is he doesn't have to do much. So I don't know if it's necessarily a reflection of his ability. I think he's just in such a good situation, and I don't know if he would thrive. I mean, I don't know if you can even say he's thrived there. He's had some good games, and it's a short career there. At least if he does move on this year, but if they do move on from him, but I don't know if we see him thrive anywhere else necessarily. I think this is about as good of a situation as can be for any quarterback.
He's just, if you watch him, and yes, he's had the high ankle sprain, which is tough to push through. Mm-hmm. Doctors will tell you all the time, PTs, it's better to break your ankle than sprain it, because the sprain lasts, you have no clue how long, and the break is clean. You heal from it. You know the timetable. I don't know why, but that's why.
So you do know why.
Well, yeah, yes, I know. But it's weird, right? You'd rather break your ankle than sprain it. It's just weird coming off the tongue. Garoppolo has never been able to put oomph behind his football. His out routes always fade off. He cannot throw an out route at the NFL level. His deep ball is very inconsistent and inaccurate. His decision-making hasn't been great. His accuracy in total outside of his short game is not great either. So is he, if he leaves San Francisco, is he going to start somewhere else? 100% he's going to start somewhere else. I fully believe he will start somewhere else. Josh,
he'll be a journeyman quarterback, just like Ryan Fitzpatrick.
But he's going to start. But he's
not
going to
necessarily.
Start.
I don't think he will necessarily. It'll be just like what happened with Fitz, like when they brought him into Tampa. Like he'll come in as a backup to somebody who's on the hot seat, just like Nick Foles was for Trubisky. That's going to be his career path for the rest of his career. He might get an opportunity to start down the road, sure.
But he may not get signed as a starter.
He's not going to get signed as a starter. That's what
he's not going to get starter money.
No,
he's going to get.
He'll get high-end backup money.
Yes,
Chase Daniel.
But Josh, you brought up
think alike, right?
Yeah. Josh, you brought up the Bears. I'd rather have Jimmy Garoppolo than any of those two guys starting right now. Like Trubisky is terrible. I could bring in Maggie for this because she's a Bears fan. We're sitting there waiting curbside to get our dinner from Whataburger. She's cursing Nick Foles' name out the window because we're talking football. Foles is terrible. It blows my mind. That guy won a Super Bowl. Because we sit here and say,
you're just jealous because he beat the Patriots.
No, it's Josh. It's not even that. He could have beaten the Rex Grossman-led Bears, and I would still be shocked. It's like we talk about some of the worst quarterbacks to ever win a Super Bowl. Rex Grossman and Trent Dilfer. Always at the top of the list. Like, they're two of the worst quarterbacks. Grossman
two very
didn't
different
win.
pedigrees, too. At least Trent Dilfer was a first-round pick.
That's true. But Trent Dilfer's the worst starting quarterback, arguably, to win a Super Bowl. Nick Foles has to be in that conversation.
Well, to be fair, Nick Foles wasn't a starting quarterback.
No, and that's true. But a guy who started in the Super Bowl for his team, it's just, again, blows my mind. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to end up being a starter somewhere. Not for the money he's currently getting paid, but he's definitely going to be a starter somewhere. All right, Josh, you also have two. You have the Bucks and the Seahawks in the NFC Championship game, which I don't know if that's too bold. I agree with it, though. And then also you have people...
To me, it's the best offense against the best defense.
Oh, yeah. And
that's kind of what I'm going... Like, right now, like, Seattle's offense is humming so much that they can beat a good defense. But when it comes to playoff time, you need to be able to stop somebody. And if Tom Brady keeps playing the way that he's playing, I'm not sure that them as a good offense can beat the Bucs defense.
I have Seattle as Super Bowl favorites. I think Seattle beats
That's
Tampa
fair.
Bay.
I mean, the way that they're playing right now, absolutely. I will say a dark horse team, though, Arizona Cardinals.
I was just about to say we could see Seattle against Arizona in the NFC Championship.
I will say that,
if the seeding, obviously.
Game.
I think that would be an amazing game because Arizona's defense is very underrated.
Yeah, losing Chandler Jones did not help them, though.
I mean, that's huge.
I think what they really need to do is they need to ramp up Isaiah Simmons quickly. Because if they get him to a point where he can rush the passer, look out.
Josh, he had only played because he had that interception in that.
He played like
game.
8 snaps that game.
I think it was 5 snaps exactly.
Yeah,
unreal.
They're slowly, gradually getting him into the defense. But yeah, I had Isaiah Simmons as my linebacker 15 coming into this season for IDP, and that has been a big swing and a miss. Because I thought Arizona was going to plug him in immediately into the Jordan Hicks role, and they did not do that in the slightest. Josh, your fantasy one, people won't be near as high on Mr. DJ Moore heading into 2021.
Yeah, and I think it all boils down to Robbie Anderson. I mean, we're seeing right now, I think that when you look at the games, you look at the targets, you look at what corners the defenses are lining up against the Panthers, they're still treating DJ Moore as the wide receiver 1. But Robbie Anderson right now is the more productive guy. And I think it's just because that DJ Moore can't break that coverage. And again, this is pure speculation off my part. I've seen a little bit of the film. He's quick, but he's so much better after the catch than he is at beating the single press coverage, getting off the line.
Yep.
But if you can get him in space He's going to make you miss, and he's going to break it. That's why we see these 50-yard touchdowns from him.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we don't see the 6-yard touchdowns from him, because he can't break that coverage quickly. So I think that people saw the breakout from last year and a lot of garbage time, and now it's like, is he really that guy? I think he's still good. He's still a talented wide receiver. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's not. I just don't think he's the top 7 dynasty wide receiver that a lot of people pegged him to be. I think he's probably more like top 15 range.
Yep.
I think he's maybe a low-end wide receiver 1 at best, but I think he's still more comfortably a wide receiver 2, which in a way makes him more matchup prone.
Yeah.
You talk about
and that's coming from somebody that paid hugely for DJ Moore in a couple dynasty leagues.
Steve Smith said it when they drafted DJ Moore that they had never been able to replace him at the receiver position until now. And you look at it, in football-wise,
they're very similar players.
DJ Moore is a great football player. When it comes to fantasy football, it's a different story. You can be great at football and suck at fantasy football.
Yep.
That's a very, very
and
real
that's
thing.
not to say that he's still not a fantasy asset.
Oh
Because
no, he 100% is. But
yeah,
he's not.
He absolutely is. But I don't think he's ever going to be a 7, 8, 9 touchdown guy.
I say he doesn't score enough touchdowns. I thought you were going to say a top 10 receiver. He doesn't score enough touchdowns.
Yeah, no, absolutely not.
Correct.
And the only way you're going to offset that for fantasy to be a top 10 guy is if you're putting up Julio type yardage numbers, and I don't see it from him.
Correct. Yeah. And his explosiveness with the ball in his hands is similar to Steve Smith, but I think when you compare the two, Smith was on another level compared to DJ Moore right now. So yeah. And before I get into my bold predictions, I do see we have a trade question from our friend Gabe over on YouTube here. So Gabe has to take over a dynasty team. He's never been in the league before. He's not sure how it works. Immediately got offered a trade. He got offered Tyreek Hill and Kareem Hunt for DeAndre Swift, Henry Ruggs, and Harrison Bryant. So what are we thinking of this?
I will preface this really quick. His next comment was the team has 1 win. It's basically an orphan that he's being asked to take over. So ideally, somebody's going after his best players to help him reload with younger players.
Yeah.
I would honestly take Harrison Bryant out of the mix and ask for like a first-round pick.
I would ask for a couple first-round picks.
I would decline this trade so fast and not even consider it. So,
you need.
I mean, I understand the logic behind it. Like, trading the older, the players that are basically going to rot on your roster because it's not contending, to reload with younger players. But you do that by acquiring draft capital as well.
Yeah, and it's almost like they're trying to offer him the new Kareem Hunt and the new Tyreek Hill. Plus, I'll throw in this tight end who's technically started the season as a third-string guy on his own team, but we won't get into all that. Don't trade Tyreek Hill. He's tied to the best quarterback in the NFL. Just don't do it. I'm not saying he's untradeable. It's going to take a hell of a lot more than that to get him off of my roster.
When did Tyreek Hill get traded to Seattle? That's weird.
Whatever.
Strange. I thought he wore red, not blue.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think you can get more out of for Tyreek Hill and for Kareem Hunt.
Yeah,
Kareem Hunt
by themselves.
Exactly. I mean, like that package alone for Hill, I don't know if I would take that.
That's fair.
And that's
I might take that for Kareem Hunt.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
sure.
can agree with that. Because Swift,
Gabe, you brought up you've never played before. Wide receivers far more valuable than running backs. The shelf life is just higher. So sorry, Marvin, go ahead.
No, that a great point. And I wouldn't necessarily try to trade those guys as soon as possible just because you're rebuilding. You have to also look at your rebuilding window. If you think you might get there, depending on what picks you have, if you can get there in 2 years, I think Hill's still going to be relevant in 2 years. And Kareem Hunt could still, he's great. As long as there are no off-field issues, he will be great on the field. And so, Kareem Hunt, I would probably want to trade, but I think Hill, I would definitely want to keep him because what is he, 25, 26?
Yeah.
He's going to be 28 in 2 years, 29. I think he'll still be productive with Mahomes. So I would, if I can get multiple first-round picks for Hill or another, like T. Higgins plus a first, I think I would do that. I would do that. But for Ruggs, who we haven't seen as much from yet, who I don't like his situation as much, I don't know if I would do that. So,
yeah, not a Ruggs fan at all. To me, he's in that like Hollywood Brown range of guys that will be good football players, but not good fantasy assets.
Yep.
You'll have a couple boom games from them every single year, and then it's going to get you all hyped up again. But he's the shiny new toy that's just ultimately going to disappoint you and make you want to pull your hair out because you're never going to know when to start him. Harrison Bryant, I do like, but I mean, he was my tight end one going into this year, so I'm a little bullish, a lot more bullish on Bryant than I am really any of these other tight ends from this rookie class. But again, it boils down to how much is Stefanski going to utilize the tight end position moving forward. They've been doing it more lately, but it's been a lot of injury purposes. What happens when Chubb comes back? Then Hunt moves into that role and those tight ends disappear.
Yep.
Exactly.
So how does that progress going forward? Are they going to keep OBJ? If they don't, then maybe you see the tight ends progress forward in Cleveland. But Bryant, to me, is a guy that, as good as I think he is in the ceiling that he can be, he's still going to be capped by the offense that he's in because he is a good blocker. So they're going to keep him in line. It's kind of similar to Austin Hooper, who I don't think is as good of a blocker as people think that he is.
Nope.
But they also paid Hooper a lot of money, so Bryant's still always going to be second fiddle to Hooper, regardless of what they do with David Njoku. But yeah, to your guys' point, Tyreek Hill should easily fetch 2 first-round picks at minimum, and maybe another player or a first and a very high upside younger player. Kareem Hunt, I think you could probably get that type of package for Kareem Hunt. These guys are offering trades because they know you're the new guy coming in. So you don't know the value of draft picks yet. You will learn very quickly what the value of draft picks are in Dynasty.
Don't let them take advantage of you, Gabe.
Yeah.
We're here to help you. All right. My bold predictions. I have 2 of them as well. The New England Patriots will not draft a quarterback in the first round of the 2021 draft, even though they should. Just going to name you.
Bill Belichick has too much pride.
Way too much pride.
He won 6 Super Bowls with a 6th-round pick. He's not spending a first-round pick on a quarterback.
Way too much pride. So it's just Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields are the projected top 2 guys to come out of this class. Both projected. Lawrence projected 1, Fields projected top 10. As of right now, the Patriots have a top 10 draft pick, which makes me want to throw up in my mouth, but I'm happy for it. We need to rebuild at this point.
I remember the times when the Patriots never had bottom from the first round.
Josh, I remember times we didn't even use our first-round draft picks because we traded them. Because we didn't want
I'm saying that I remember a time when the Patriots weren't winning Super Bowls every other year.
They weren't winning games, Josh, back in the 90s. They couldn't find a win in the win column. Trey Lance out of North Dakota State, projected first-rounder. And then you're going to Zach Wilson from BYU, who'll be a 2nd, 3rd rounder. Kyle Trask, 2nd to 4th. Jamie Newman from Georgia, 2nd to 4th. Mac Jones, etc. None of these guys excite me, but I'd like to take a chance on one of them. But Josh, you said it. Belichick has too much pride. He's not going to do it. Not going to do it. He will not do it. So for those of you expecting potentially, a James White uptick, or a N'Keal Harry uptick, any receiver that they hopefully get on the roster next year uptick, not going to happen. There's not going to be a quarterback to throw him the football because Cam Newton's not returning. Unless Cam Newton looks like 2015 MVP Cam Newton for the rest of the season, he's never wearing a Patriots jersey ever again.
Jets this week. That's the spark plug that he needs right there.
Josh, I would not be shocked if they lose this game. 100% I would not be shocked if they lose this game.
I said the same thing when the Eagles played Dallas last week.
I'm fully ready. I'm fully prepared to jump off my balcony when the Patriots lose to the Jets on Monday Night Football. I'm fully prepared. And it's a primetime game, too. That's the thing that, oh my God, Cam Newton is going to be a dud in front of the entire country. I can't wait. All right. And then my second one, a little more bold. The Baltimore Ravens are no longer a dominant force with Lamar Jackson at quarterback.
I think that's very bold. Because
They're
I think
not.
the biggest reason that they've faltered this year is because they haven't had a consistent running game behind him.
Yeah.
When they move on from Mark Ingram going into 2021 and you have J.K. Dobbins, you will have a more consistent running game. And if you look at the great Michael Vick rushing years from like 03 to I believe it was 07 when he got popped for dogfighting, it was every other year. It was 03, it was 05, it was 07. Those were the peak years.
Sure.
This is going to be that down year for Lamar, who's still going to be good, by the way. And he I mean, outside of like passing, he's been very inconsistent, but he's still been good as a runner. He will bounce back next year. So I don't necessarily agree with that take, but it is very bold, and that was the whole point of this. So
I go back to the last offense that looked like this, and it was Colin Kaepernick's offense. Kaepernick lit the world on fire the year he went to the Super Bowl. What do you do after? Teams figured out. A college-style offense will never succeed in the NFL. It will never succeed. Lamar Jackson is a 20 QBR in the playoffs. 20. You could start Nathan Peterman and get roughly the exact same QBR as Lamar Jackson does in the playoffs. Like that's what we're talking
always
about.
find a way to throw Nathan Peterman into
Love
the
Nathan
conversation.
Blake Bortles has a better playoff QBR than Lamar Jackson. Blake
I
Bortles.
will say this. I think the biggest thing for me will be what they decide to do with Greg Roman. Because Greg Roman, for as great as he is at introducing these like younger quarterbacks that are more run friendly at first, he doesn't evolve.
That's my
when
point.
they grow. So if John Harbaugh and the Ravens decide that they need a different offensive coordinator that can be creative enough to still utilize the athleticism of Lamar, but help him grow as a passer, that to me will be the biggest key in Lamar's success going forward.
And my biggest thing in this is that Lamar Jackson has looked terrible throwing the football. Like it looks like he's regressed from last year. So with that in mind, look, I'm sorry. If Baltimore gets
I just traded him in our 1 QB Dynasty League.
You did, yeah. If Baltimore gets a legit wide receiver 1, I may change my stance. But right now,
I still think they have that in Miles Boykin. Just saying.
Potentially.
I love that kid.
But right now,
yeah. He's big and he runs a 4.40. Like, come
Yeah.
on. Why would you not want to throw him the football?
but listen, right now, what's stopping teams from stacking 8 in the box and just leaving receivers one-on-one coverage? Absolutely nothing, because Baltimore doesn't have a legit receiver. Mark Andrews hasn't looked
They just
good.
signed Des Bryant.
Oh,
That's right.
God.
I can't wait to see him on the field.
I'm sorry, I didn't know it was 2013 again. It's just
I had to throw that in there.
I love it. I absolutely love it. But you look at it. Unless James Prochet comes into the mix and starts shaking up his SMU magic. Listen, James Prochet needs a chance. All these receivers on Baltimore are terrible. But like I said, like you stack 8, you plug the gaps and have contain on the outside. I would bet run every single down for the Baltimore Ravens. Every single down. Make Lamar throw. Because we've seen he can't succeed throwing the football.
So I'm just going to throw a couple of quick stats out. I'm not necessarily disputing it. Lamar Jackson has the same yards per attempt as Tom Brady, just a little under Kyler Murray. Has the same amount of touchdown pass, or one more touchdown pass than Joe Burrow in 140 fewer attempts. I think it's more of a volume issue than a efficiency issue.
We all knew that was going to be an issue. I mean, we all expected a little bit more passing attempts, but the completion percentage is down. The touchdown efficiency is down. It's not down by too much, but it's still down. Again, these were all things that we expected going into this year. It was just, how is he still going to hit on those deep passes, which he's not hitting on this year?
And he's not rushing for touchdowns.
Correct. He only has 2 rushing touchdowns this year.
The Ravens are averaging more pass plays this year from 29.3 to 30.3.
Oh,
So
big
there
time.
is that. But the regression just hit hard.
Yeah.
It's just he's not as efficient as he was and not looking as great. And that's not good for fantasy for everyone involved.
Yeah.
And Mark Andrews, who I thought was going to be a great tight end this year. And
Yeah,
just
he's been very boomer bust this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just think when you look at the passing touchdown numbers,
Mhm.
teams are going to – you want to talk about me, stacking the box with 8 if I'm the defensive coordinator anywhere in the field. I'm stacking the box with 10 on the goal line because you're expecting Lamar Jackson to have the football in his hands running. So his touchdown efficiency is obviously going to be up if he's not throwing the football a lot. You run play action on the goal line, someone's open every play. I don't know why more teams don't do it. If you ran play action with Tom Brady on the goal line, his tight end would still be open. Everyone sells out for the run within 5 yards. So that's the thing, is his touchdown efficiency is going to be up because it's that short game. You pass for all the touchdowns you want. Throw for 30 touchdowns. If you're throwing for 300 total yards, it doesn't do it for me. Lamar Jackson, I love the skill that he has. He has the demeanor. He works his ass off. You can't find someone that doesn't like Lamar Jackson for the player that he is and the player he could potentially be. But the issue is, he can't throw the football. That's a fact. He cannot throw the football. If he figures it out, Baltimore is scary. But the thing is, I think he's a Michael Vick. He's exactly Michael Vick, except he's way faster. And he's also going to get his career worn out much quicker. Like just watching the
arm strength.
Yeah, watching the Pittsburgh game, he got smacked on some of those runs that he was taking. Like, slide, dude, step out of bounds. And Ryan, you brought it up, the arm strength. Vic could flick his wrist and that ball goes 70 yards.
I mean, Lamar's got a strong arm, but it's
it's
dude,
not
Michael
Michael
Vick, man.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Like, what was that game where he had to play for Ben Roethlisberger because Ben Roethlisberger was hurt on
Honest
Monday
to
Night
God, that
Football?
is like it was never accurate, but that was like the sexiest deep ball I've ever seen from a left-hander ever.
You remember it was one of the last scenes he played with Pittsburgh, and he played against the San Diego Chargers on Monday Night Football. He threw it like a 70-yard deep ball perfectly in stride. It looked like he was throwing a 2-yard slant. It was unbelievable. And Lamar Jackson doesn't have that. And you can't teach arm strength. You either have
you
it
really can't.
or you don't. You cannot teach arm strength. That's a gift. Josh Allen has arm strength. Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, those guys have arm strength. Guys like Jimmy Garoppolo, guys like Lamar Jackson, they don't have it. Especially on deep passes, they don't have it. All right, we have gone 2 hours, and I've loved every single minute of it. But
Was not expecting this at all.
it's a lot of good talk. What can we say?
This is true.
Yeah.
Right? Marvin could have told us to stop at any time. I'm
Hey,
happy
this
he
was
stayed
fun.
the whole. I love it.
Fun.
I'm happy. As if our guests have fun, that's what matters. And obviously, had some great interaction
Yeah.
here on YouTube, which was
And real quick, I do want to apologize for anybody that has thrown like redraft questions out at us. I'm sure maybe you joined in the middle of it or didn't see some of the inquiries because we were talking about Dynasty. We wanted to keep the focus on Dynasty.
correct.
So if I was short in the comments with any of you, I do apologize. I just didn't want us to focus on that, but we'll be back tomorrow morning answering start-sit questions for redraft purposes.
Yes, we will.
So, we got your back. I promise. We're not neglecting you. We're not forgetting about you. We don't value, or we do value you. I
No,
promise.
we don't value you. We don't value you at all.
And because of how long this show went, there
That
may
came out wrong.
I said, well, because of how long this show went, there may legit not be a show doc tomorrow. So we need your question.
Yeah, we do need your questions.
Love it.
But yeah, and then
Well, we
obviously-
need some kind of show, Doc. We have a guest on with us tomorrow.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'll have the injuries in there too. so.
Obviously, our weekly show as well on Wednesdays. We answer every question that comes across that we can. And Saturday, we make it a commitment to answer every single question that comes across. So please join us tomorrow morning. Start, sit, different day, 11 a.m. Eastern, and I'll announce the guests in a second. But first, Marvin, thanks for sticking with us for 2 hours. This was
Yes,
awesome.
thank you,
Yeah.
Marvin. It's been a blast, dude.
Yeah, no, thank you guys for having me. This was a ton of fun. Can't imagine a better way to start the weekend. So appreciate it. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Marvin.
Wow, I mean, what a better way to start the weekend. I love that. We should go in the Twitter bio now. No better way to start the weekend.
Boom.
At Club Fantasy FFL.
At
Perfect.
Club
All right.
Fantasy. No better way to start the weekend. Love it. Awesome. The next episode of Club Dynasty, if you are a Dynasty fan, will be December 4th. Remember, it's going to be the first Friday of every month. That's how we're doing this. We don't know who the guest is going to be yet.
I have an idea, but I haven't confirmed anything yet.
Well, I'm going to make a surprise announcement because I didn't know the date until just now. That's my wedding anniversary, so I will not be on that show.
So I guess I got to get 2 guests for that.
Yeah, there you go.
Wow.
Well, happy anniversary.
Wow, Ryan. How selfish of you.
What a
right?
dick.
Jesus.
How
Come on, your wife doesn't understand. What the hell's the matter with her?
Oh, she would. She doesn't want to spend time with me.
All right, so Ryan will not be joining us. We will most likely have 1, if not 2 guests on that show December 4th, so be on the lookout for that. That'll be the 3/4 point of the fantasy football season. That'll be the last week of, if you're looking at redraft or even any league, the last week of the regular season, unless you are, of course, in a smaller league and you do play in week 14 as the regular season. But for most leagues, last week of the regular season. Again, tomorrow morning, start sit different day, 11 o'clock Eastern. And joining us from the Pacific Coast at 8 in the morning, big thank you. I have been wanting her on the show, Sam Holt, who was a part of our Women of Fantasy Football shows back in August and the last day in September. So awesome. Can't wait to have her on. Her Steelers, the only undefeated team in the NFL, and will continue to be undefeated because they're playing the worst team in football. So, yeah. Reminder,
I don't know. The Jets might take offense to that statement. So.
I mean, who would you rather have? Sam Darnold in that offense or Garrett Gilbert in that offense?
I'm kind of leaning Garrett Gilbert right now. I don't trust Adam Gase.
Is it Gilbert or is it Cooper Rush?
They have not
announced it yet because apparently it makes that big of a difference.
Yeah.
Listen, I want Garrett Gilbert just to see a quarterback from the AAF and see how he does.
Love it.
There you
Right?
go.
Let's get Garrett Gilbert in here. Because that's tomorrow morning. Everywhere you're watching right now besides Twitch is where we're going to be live doing the Start Sit Different Day tomorrow morning. And, of course, the second episode of the Speakeasy with Faith, it is going to be Stepmom Lauren. She is the guest. You can watch that next Tuesday. It's going to drop at 7 o'clock Eastern, 7 p.m. Eastern, Tuesday the 10th. And then, of course, Wednesday's show with Kira Wyatorowski.
Hey, you got it. There you go.
Big time. Kira Wyatorowski, who writes our DFS articles that come out every Saturday, Kira's Cash Grab. So be on the lookout for that tomorrow after our Start Sit Different Day show. But then, of course, Kira's going to join us on Wednesday to kick off Week 10 of fantasy football. All right. Thank you once again, Marvin, for the One Hudsonian, for FF_Marvin, capital E, for the Fantasy 5, and for myself. You can follow Club Fantasy on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Club Fantasy FFL. The URL is clubfantasyffl.com. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, please. We very much appreciate it. Always remember, defense wins championships. Offense wins fantasy football. We will see you in just about 12 hours from now for Start Sit Different Day. Bye!